Imagine if you will a world in which everything you're exposed to is fake, a world in which you are nothing more than a puppet on a string, a world in which the reality you perceive as a mirage, nothing more than an intricate multi-dimensional facade. 35 years ago, John Carpenter created one of the most remarkable movies ever created on the subject of ideology, and the movie was completely ignored. However, They Live is arguably the most important movie ever made. Almost 4 decades from its release, its overarching message has never been as important or as poignant as it is today. They Live wasn't fiction, it was a prophecy. Brody Pipper, known as Nada in the film, is a disillusioned drifter who travels to Los Angeles in search of employment. There he befriends a construction worker named Frank and settles in a shantytown. As time passes, Nada becomes increasingly aware of suspicious activities taking place in the squatter settlement, with some inhabitants regularly congregating in a nearby church. However, following a violent police raid in the church, Nada decides to investigate what exactly is going on here. Shortly after discovering a cryptic message on the wall that reads, "They live, we sleep," Nada finds a pair of suspicious-looking sunglasses. While wandering the streets of LA, Nada decides to try on his newfound shades. This is when They Live really comes to life, and the protagonist's existence is met with an existential shift. The sunglasses, in a very literal sense, change Nada's perspective. They shatter his concept of reality. In addition to causing him to experience black and white vision and a headache, the shades also allow Nada to see the world in a brand new light. Advertisements now read "Obey." Magazines in a shop contain messages like "Do not question authority and consume," and even dollar bills bear the message "This is your God." Nada realizes that he, like almost every other human, is a slave to an all-pervading system. By wearing the glasses, Nada is able to see through the deception and uncover the true meaning behind everything. The lies, the deceit, the master plan to enslave humanity. Breaking free, Nada realizes, is the only option here, and Nada is utterly horrified when he sets his eyes upon a man sporting an elegant suit and an opulent-looking watch, only to be confronted with a repulsive, decomposing countenance. This is the epitome of they, a privileged class transformed into a hideous, alien-like species. They live by exploiting us. We are their fuel. They are parasites, and we are their unsuspecting hosts. They are the self-appointed herders, and we are their subservient livestock. While they profit and plunder, we sleep, oblivious to the subliminal messages that we are being fed. Does this sound familiar? If not, it really should. We are constantly bombarded with advertisements with subliminal messaging, imploring us to purchase some product or believe in some ideology. However, the most effective advertisements act in a subtle yet potent way. David Ogilvy, the father of modern-day advertising, famously said, "A good advertisement is one which sells the product without drawing attention to itself." And the fact is not lost on the unscrupulous advertisers of today. On any given day, you're exposed to hundreds, if not thousands of different advertisements, which might seem like an absurdly high number until you realize almost every single post on social media is an advertisement. You might not notice them at a conscious level, but they notice you and they are affecting you. Subliminal messages can be found on TV, social media, in movies, music videos, and even kids' cartoons. These hidden signals are strategically inserted into advertising messages with the intention of influencing the subconscious behavior of the target audience. The use of such advertising tactics is often deemed unethical, and in certain cases, even prohibited by law. Nevertheless, the subliminal messages persist. Carpenter expertly satirizes the excessive commercialism of the 80s, emphasizing the control exerted by corporations over the masses. Although Carpenter was a visionary, he can never have dreamed of the world we're in today, where companies with more money and power than countries have plugged themselves into every aspect of your life. Then there's companies like Amazon, with a market value 4 times bigger than Austria's GDP. Much of this comes from tracking your online behavior, harvesting your data, then weaponizing this information obtained to target you, or use it in the Washington Post to sell you more garbage, to sell you more political ideologies, to keep the whole machine well-oiled. Humans' love for shopping is undeniable. However, have you ever actually asked yourself why this is the case? Or more specifically, who is actually responsible for our insatiable urge to shop until we drop? Well, a significant portion of our shopping behavior can be attributed to one man, Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, the controversial psychologist who said all humans are driven by unconscious forces. Bernays was a pioneer in the fields of public relations and propaganda. He is widely recognized for introducing modern PR techniques, such as utilizing celebrities to endorse products, employing metaphors to sway public opinion, and using symbols to evoke emotions. And while these techniques may seem innocent, or even harmless at a first glance, their purpose was to manipulate individuals into purchasing unnecessary or unwanted items. As is clear to see, Bernays' master plan works splendidly. For him, that is, not us. This festive season, nearly 40% of Americans will go into debt to pay for presents and other holiday-related expenses. At the same time, many of these people have zero emergency savings, nothing, not 1 cent, just another hamster on the wheel. And Bernays believed that he could convince people to buy products based on emotions rather than practicality. He could generate demand for previously unappealing or unknown items. To achieve this, he developed techniques that aim to tap into our subconscious desires and establish an emotional connection between a product and its consumer. In essence, he artificially created a need for certain products by exploiting our emotions emotions. Consequently, because of America's cunning ways, we have witnessed decades of overconsumption. Bernays, often hailed as the pioneer of public relations, published his influential masterpiece Propaganda in 1928. In this groundbreaking and dystopian work, he plumbed the depths of human minds, emphasizing that public relations should not be diminished as a mere trick, but rather recognized as an essential tool for controlling the purchasing behaviors of the masses. Quote, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses," he wrote, "is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government which is the true ruling power of our country." Like Freud, he believed that, quote, "We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, and our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. It is they who pull the wires that control the public mind." And after witnessing the remarkable effectiveness of propaganda in previous wars, Bernays pondered over its potential usefulness in times of peace. However, due to the negative associations that propaganda has garnered, Bernays advocated for the term public relations. In other words, modern-day PR is simply a glorified version of wartime propaganda. Drawing on the insights of his colourful uncle, Bernays developed an approach he dubbed the engineering of consent. In short, the guru provided influential clients, including General Electric, Procter & Gamble, the American Tobacco Company, and the media giant CBS, with the tools to, quote, "control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing about it." To do so, he said it was necessary to circumvent the rational part of the mind and go straight for the jugular, in this case, the unconscious. A century ago, it was customary for Americans to have a light breakfast consisting of coffee, a slice of bread, and maybe some cereal. However, Bernays decided to explore the idea of a heartier morning meal, ostensibly for better health. Seeking professional advice, Bernays consulted the agency's doctor, who confirmed that starting the day with a more substantial meal would provide individuals with increased energy. Shortly after, Bernays requested the doctor reach out to 5,000 fellow doctors and inquire about their stance on the matter, and surprisingly, over 4,500 doctors responded affirmatively, agreeing with the idea of a heavier breakfast for improved health. Armed with this overwhelming response, Bernays seized the opportunity to craft a compelling narrative. The newspaper headlines soon proclaimed, 4,500 physicians advocate for Americans to embrace substantial breakfast to enhance their well-being. Many of these articles highlighted bacon and eggs as the quintessential components of a real American morning meal. Bernays also applied Freudian psychology to instant cake mix. Yes, cake mix. During World War II, this formula was created to simplify the process of cooking or baking food. By simply adding water to the dry ingredients mix and heating it up, you can make food in no time, but housewives for some reason weren't buying it. They resisted purchasing the mix. So Bernays realized that when housewives simply added water to the mix, they felt a sense of guilt deep within their subconscious. Why? Because they felt they contributed very little to the process. Building upon this revelation, the recipe was then altered to include a couple of eggs, and the inclusion worked as planned. According to Freudian psychology, the woman's act of offering her eggs to her husband should be seen as an unconscious gift. This gesture not only eliminates guilt, but also holds a deeper significance. In Freudian theory, the egg symbolizes life and birth, adding a profound meaning to the creation of the cake. In this way, the housewife metaphorically gives birth to something special for her husband. And Bernays' impact on how we view and consume items simply can't be overstated, and this fact was not lost on John Carpenter. And They Live provides us with an answer to this whole situation, albeit a deeply unsettling one. Nada, Piper's character's name, is Spanish for nothing. In the eyes of the elite, which includes corporate executives, marketing magnates and politicians, we are, as Nada's name suggests, nothing. Why concern yourself with ethical dilemmas when your target audience, which consists of billions of people, are deemed insignificant objects, meat suits who deserve to be manipulated, molded, and mercilessly exploited? Nada is a representation of the everyday citizen. For many of us, however, the truth is too painful to confront. For many, ignorance is synonymous with bliss. So Nada urges Frank, his friend, to wear the sunglasses in order for him to see the ways things really are. However, Frank, obviously aware of the brutal realities that await him if he accepts the request, actually refuses to wear the glasses.
Put them on.
With a family to support, Frank says he couldn't bear the harsh reality of knowing his entire life is just a lie. Nada, however, is having none of it. After a rather surreal fight scene in the last several minutes, Nada forces the sunglasses onto Frank's face.
Look at them, they're everywhere!
Maybe they can see Valley 5th and Spring.
And from that moment on, Frank's life changes forever. Now, Carpenter's sunglasses idea turns the script on its head. It's common to hear calls to remove our rose-tinted glasses in order to see things in an objective manner. Carpenter, however, makes the case that what we perceive as objective truth is in fact a carefully curated simulation. We are, as the movie suggests, cogs in a forever turning wheel. Resources who are being mined financially, psychologically, and spiritually. But we can only realize this fact by donning the glasses, not taking them off. So Nada and Frank then join forces with a group of individuals who have also experienced the effects of the sunglasses. There they form an underground resistance movement. Through a series of intense, violent confrontations, they successfully infiltrate the secret gathering place of the extraterrestrial elites. Their bravery is, in the end, rewarded, but it requires sacrifice and huge amounts of pain, and a willingness to accept some cold, harsh reality. At its core, They Live is a film about the eternal struggle for individuality, autonomy, and the noble pursuit of truth. And Carpenter encourages each and every viewer to question the overarching narrative that permeates their life, and to ask loudly and unapologetically if they are being influenced by ominous external forces. But it's important to note that this masterpiece was inspired by 8 O'Clock in the Morning, a short story written 60 years ago. You see, when we think of dystopian fiction, our minds usually go to 1984, but Ray Nelson's tale, which inspired Carpenter, who would later inspire the makers of The Matrix, is perhaps the most important and most overlooked short story of the 20th century. The plot surrounds George Nader, an apparently ordinary, rather unremarkable individual who finds himself in a situation where he becomes aware of a conspiracy orchestrated by extraterrestrial beings. These aliens possess the ability to manipulate reality and utilize the media as a means to subdue and dominate the human race. Which sounds awfully relevant, doesn't it? George's awakening then occurs after an experience with a hypnotist that takes a weird turn, with the protagonist now possessing the ability to perceive non-human faces, known as fascinators, scattered throughout society. However, George, the only truly awakened civilian in existence, quickly realizes that if he displays any indication of his awareness, the fascinators will instantly order him to revert to his previous state, or worse, end his life. In essence and in structure, Nelson's tale reflects Carpenter's adaptation. A man named Nader, an average Joe, discovers that the world we perceive is not what it seems, that the buildings, posters, television shows, architecture, advertisements, and even the people before us are just simply a facade, a veil of normalcy concealing the truth. That a race of multi-eyed snake creatures not only control the earth, but also our very thoughts and impulses. The aforementioned obey, consume, yield, etc. seems exactly the same as what's happening today with companies like BlackRock, investing into every single company that you know and controlling the message they espouse. I mean, there's a reason all companies, all advertisements, all governments seem to share the same narrative, and everyone around you probably does too. And in They Live, once he comprehends that these creatures hypnotize humanity into complacency in order to literally consume them, he then sets out to put an end to this long-standing occupation. He realizes that television is the fascinator's primary weapon, and after dispatching the creature in front of the cameras, he leaves the corpse in his chair, stands off camera, mimics the fascinator, and urges people to wake up and kill the creatures on sight. But today, as TV loses its cachet, social media platforms should be viewed as the fascinator's weapon of choice. From an early age, children are handed digital devices and social media accounts, quickly becoming iPad kids, entering worlds where they are bombarded with dangerously high amounts of advertisements and questionable ideologies. From as soon as they're born, they are influenced by the worst among us, and once they hop onto the digitally powered treadmill, they never get off. They are consumers or slaves for life. In certain aspects, Nelson's no-nonsense storytelling technique proves advantageous to the narrative here. Its ultimate objective is to utilize science fiction and adventure as a subversive tool, effectively addressing the numbing impact of American culture on its people. It has been hijacked. At the time of They Live's release, Carpenter only expressed his dissatisfaction with the economic policies of then US President Ronald Reagan, commonly known as Reaganomics, as well as the increasing commercialization in popular culture and politics during that time. Carpenter actually stated that the premise of the movie involved the so-called Reagan Revolution being controlled by aliens from another galaxy. These extraterrestrial beings insisted Carpenter taking over the world and were exploiting Earth as if it were a third world planet. Carpenter wearily observed that everything we saw on television was designed to sell us something, from fast food to fast cars. The messages relayed to us emphasized the significance of consumerism, and today it's only so much worse. Every influencer you see today is showing off their new rich lifestyle. People with the newest Bugattis, the best suits, the Rolexes, living in Dubai, in luxury penthouses. And these are supposed to be our saviors from the other side of the spectrum, the established corporations and governments that espouse the same nonsense opinions to control the population. That's why They Live is more relevant than ever today. In 2012, the philosopher Slavoj Žižek released The Pervert's Guide to Ideology, a documentary film that begins by analyzing They Live. In this analysis, Žižek utilizes the film's portrayal of special sunglasses that unveil the truth to elucidate his own interpretation of ideology. According to Žižek, the sunglasses serve as a form of criticism towards ideology. They enable individuals to perceive the genuine message concealed beneath the layers of propaganda, glamour, and posters. And by donning these sunglasses, one becomes aware of the presence of a hidden order within democracy, which upholds the illusion of freedom. Žižek, in his own unique, rather frantic style, passionately implores viewers to take Carpenter's advice. And it makes sense here, because today, as we go into 2024, we are living in extremely strange times, in which the gap between the haves and have-nots continues to widen, where we are constantly bombarded with false idols, false messaging, and subliminal propaganda disguised as friendly advertisements. If ideologies are systems of socially shared ideas, beliefs, and values used to justify certain behaviors, then we have to ask, where did they begin, and who is dictating which ideologies are both acceptable and unacceptable to us? Who is determining the truth in modern society? And to answer this question, one must first reach for the glasses. Carpenter knew this, and now you do too. Your desires and and programming is for someone else's benefit. The fact that you don't know the truth is the way it's supposed to be. You think what you think because you have been conditioned, often via subliminal messages, to think this way. But as They Live shows, there is a way out, and you have to break free before it's too late.